Welcome to the Human Factors and Ergonomics Hub, a series of educational podcasts that showcase the connection between human capabilities and good work design, brought to you by the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society of Australia. This podcast is brought to you by Sharon Todd, a certified professional ergonomist and the current president of the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society of Australia. Sara Pazell is a certified professional ergonomist. She is the managing director for Viva Health at Work and provides teaching and research support to numerous universities in organisational science, human factors, ergonomics, health and wellness, safety and allied health. Sara was the committee chair for the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society of Australia's Good Work Design position paper and recently co-edited a publication called Ergonomic Insights with real stories about the successes and failures of work design. So let's take a deep dive into the design of work and ask really the first question, which is why do we design in work?
Yeah, look, congratulations for launching these podcasts, Sharon. This is excellent to be able to have this sort of time and space to explore great concepts that are meaningful to certified professional ergonomists, human factors specialists, and organizational managers. So, thinking about the design of good work is really vital to achieve business objectives. Business exists, they have an objective to achieve. They often have problems they need to solve, something they need to create. By adding an element of good work design, you also help make sure that the elements of the human factor are well considered. So people matter. Their health, their happiness, their engagement, their ability to be retained as quality employees. So you hold that intellectual property. Their safety, of course, the creativity, the novelty, and the innovations that can occur. There are studies on human happiness that suggest that several factors contribute to a good life. And those are things like strong relationships. They may be aspects of quality social engagement or a sense of purpose and meaning and coherence about your world around you, the life, your experiences where you feel you have some relative control and you have a positive outlook as a result, an ability to cope with stress, adversity. You have those sense of resilience, if you will. So this is important in engaging activities that are pleasurable, that give us a sense of accomplishment and help keep us active, contribute to happiness. So why not use work as a medium to do this? Why not use work to achieve a business objective and make sure that the people who drive our business objectives are well cared for?
How about the design of workplaces? Where does the design of workplaces fit?
So do you mean the environmental design of workplaces when you speak about that?
Design.
Oh, that's a great topic. So there are so many aspects of the places and spaces where we work. And it's been an interesting challenge because we've recently been, thrown into a changing world of work, obviously through the pandemic where people have been working at home and there are pros and cons with that. That's another big topic. But what we're finding is that no matter what, places and spaces matter. And I've heard people say, well, maybe it's just having a sense of purpose at work. But there is so much research to unpack about places and spaces. So elements like your lighting, how that contributes to your circadian rhythms. Elements like the airflow, the quality of the airflow. Are you exposed to molds? Have you got good ventilation? How is that going to help you think? What's the temperature regulation so that you perform well? What are the elements of aspects like acoustics management? That's one of the biggest concerns I hear about any workplace, whether it's home, office, or work from anywhere, so that people can think and concentrate. And one of my side passions, Sharon, is to think about the sensory profile of workers. And so how we process a sensory world. One of my colleagues calls it having sensational workplaces, if you think about sensory processing. So how each and every one of us neurologically regulates a sense type to perform well. We kind of do that invisibly, but when our world of work changes, we're suddenly thrown into having to regulate once again. So it's how we discern a sense type against a backdrop of other senses. like noise, someone calling our name, someone saying, hey, Sharon, oi, Sharon, screaming your name. Did you actually hear it against the backdrop of all the ambient noise? Could you focus? Could you concentrate? Could you get your work done that you need to get done? How do you respond to the need for movement? How do you respond to your kinesthetic needs? Are you agitated by having to sit still, or do you have opportunities to touch and feel and you want a tactile response, or do you need to shy away from that? So when we think about the workplace and space, there's a lot that can be unpacked to make sure that we have an agile work environment that's task-based, oriented for people to just do what they need to do well, and understand there's going to be different approaches to work. So again, that goes down to good design, where you build empathy in your discovery process. There are different approaches to get a task done, and we need to design for that variability.
So how do we design for work?
How do you design for work? Great. Okay, so we've written a paper for HFESA, and our goal around this was really about trying to talk about the how-to, not just the underpinning philosophy, but what are the practical realities? And we work with a lot of practitioners and ergonomists, have that special skill to bring expertise, specialty, scientific rigor to the practice of work design. And that's things like that aspect of discovery that I mentioned a moment ago. So that's the starting point. And discovery is great because you can fulfill these obligations for work health safety legislation by consulting with workers. That's going to be most meaningful to really understand the human experience. And that helps build empathy, helps build some understanding, some appreciation of what might work, what might not work. What are the pain points? What are the gain points? What are people saying, feeling, thinking, and doing? And what's their experience of work? Yeah. So to do that, a lot of it starts with fundamental task analysis and job analysis. Are you understanding the physical, cognitive, psychosocial demands, organizational factors, environmental spaces and places, as you've mentioned? Do you understand what that task is? So a lot of the human-centered design, good design, focuses on a task-based approach, then job-based approach, and systems analysis. What are the entire work systems that contribute to achieve that business objective? So aside, you might be doing interviews, you could be using psychometric tools, you might be going out to site. I like direct observations. There are so many ways to start this discovery process, but definitely speaking to people and watching people do the work and analyzing, that varieties of work, what people really do, what they say they do, what they're prescribed, and what the literature expresses, what people think that they do from head office, and trying to see where that all matches. That's the first phase. Right? So we're talking about phases. You're asking me how do you work design? And then you've got to actually apply that science. You really need that expertise to engage in the design process. So that might involve modeling and simulation. There's a lot of testing and trialing. It's important to be able to foster a design process, to have a culture that accepts fallibility, the workplace climate that can allow you to fail and test and trial. Otherwise, innovation can't arise. So you've got to have some tolerance for this. Threshold tolerances need to be high. And when you're designing, then little small steps I usually advise to do, whether it's a prototype, whether you're doing, it depends. Depends what you're designing. Are you developing a new paper and a document? Are you developing a whole new work system? Are you devising a product, piece of equipment, re-engineering, supply chain, productive lines? Are you redesigning just somebody's job and job crafting? So whatever you're doing, it's small micro design steps, focus groups, and be prepared for perfection not to be achieved initially, to have some iterative back and forth, and to then roll it out as things progress. But celebrate the wins, big celebrations. So iterative design is back and forth while you're designing. Particularly in that prototype phase, there's often more discovery. So it's a continuous cycle that loops back and around, a big web, if you will, and then realize the good design. So when, like I said, celebrate. So it's speaking to people and writing papers and doing these podcasts and speaking at conferences and sharing it with other departments. I find even in one organization, Sharon, oftentimes there'll be workarounds. near right, so I call them, instead of near misses. And people are adapting what we call design and use is the scientific language around this. It's the adaptations that people make in their working world to still achieve a business objective, right? But it's usually not reported, not recorded. It's all happening, and we don't share that throughout the business. And if we share it throughout the business, if we capture that, A, it could be celebrated and might achieve efficiencies all throughout the organization. Or B, maybe there's a problem with that, and the people doing that workaround don't actually understand and need that scientific rigor to help them understand they may have introduced more hazards into their business and risk factors that could interact and create a catastrophe. And that might not be known. But instead of admonishing, it's like, great, thanks for that creativity, thanks for reporting. So I'm always advising clients to capture workarounds. Those to me are the critical point, the most, design ready aspects to make a positive change. And I don't see organizations doing that. We're often stuck in something conservative of containment rather than innovation. But if we were innovation focused, we'd be focusing on workarounds and trying to analyze, dissect them, and go back to that task and job analysis and work system, and then say, is this useful? Can we leverage this? Can we leverage this innovation? How do we test this? How do we trial it? So please, everybody doing your hazard reports, your near right reporting, please start a workaround, or, what I say, near miss reporting. Please do a workaround and near right reporting register. That would be one of my takeaways today.
So this is a collaborative process.
Thank you. Absolutely. People on the ground who do the jobs know their work best, subject matter expertise, but they need design expertise like a certified professional ergonomist or human factors specialist can bring, and really understanding the science, the ecological and evolutional capabilities of humans, and how for populations of workers, things might apply best, as well as the understanding of that work system, that governance, the interacting factors of the environment, the organizational factors, the factors we spoke about before, psychosocial, cognitive, physical, et cetera, fundamental. So yes, it's collaborative. And then you need to work on collaborating with conventional designers too. I dream of a space where an organization has a really well-organized umbrella framework of established relationships with conventional designers. So you've got people ready to go. And I dream, Sharon, I'll share this with you. I dream of somebody masterminding this, a chief work design strategist in every organization. Ideal background would be human factors and ergonomics. And you'll know that with our profession, we have lots of sub-professions within that, whether it's allied health or whether it's engineering or psychology, et cetera. But then they can cultivate this culture of design thinking and practice and have this ready to go army of conventional designers, whether it's interior designers, industrial designers, conventional traditional engineers, whether it's architectural, whether it's graphic designers, instructional designers, web designers, go for it. They're the ones helping to funnel and foster these design aspects and leveraging all this design capability and congealing, creating and merging all of the business objectives, making sure people have shared strategic initiatives with a design perspective. So I imagine that's a must-have role when people really understand the benefit of that in executive teams and C-suite organizations. I don't see it yet. I would love to see it.
So what you've talked about is really analysing what is assessing or looking at how work is done, discovering how work is done.
A lot of time in discovery, absolutely, and then trying to breed a culture of design. So cultivating design thinking among work teams, because one person can't do it all. You've talked about collaboration. But if you start the framework, the architecture of a design process in a business, then it can be adopted by different business units, people on the ground, and they have to have freedom, agency, and purchase into that process. Then they can start doing their own discovery. They'll start realizing what's meaningful and they'll start reporting their workarounds, if you will. They'll start saying, hey, can we test this out? Can I have some help here? Do team leaders have a budget where their KPIs are anchored around design, innovation, and strategies, not just risk and containment and, injury management. And that's all important. Please don't get me wrong, but it's not going to leverage the innovations if we're only focusing on what we don't want. We have to design for what we want, not just what we don't want. We must design for what we want. And good design is basically design that effectively solves a problem, and it's going to help us keep meeting our business objectives. It meets the needs of the users, the intended audience. It might be visually pleasing, aesthetic, but also functional. So that beautiful balance of form and function, and usually considers a cultural and social context. And I sometimes hear some criticism around human-centered design, not necessarily relating to a big picture of environmental sustainability. I don't see it that way. I see green ergonomics as part of good design and human-centered approaches, because if you look after the environment, you're likely going to look after the inhabitants on this planet. And so to me, those are hand in hand. But good design might go unnoticed because it just works, or it may be pioneering and it might stand out and it just keeps you still in your boots, jaw-dropping, if you will, because it is so amazing. So either way, as long as things are working and meeting the business objectives, there's always room for improvement. It's not static. You don't just achieve and stop. It's continuous. It's ongoing, because we know life, work, objectives, structures, systems, external environmental factors will continually challenge us with an ongoing changing world of work. So this is dynamic. It's live.
Yes, I love that sort of thought. And that feeds really nicely into human-centered design, which is what you've talked about. So let's talk in that space for a moment. We use the words user-centered design, and we also use the terms good work design. So What are they?
So when we think about the human-centered organization, you're thinking about the people who are in that work system, if you will. And there are a lot of benefits of human-centered design. You might be subject to many different commercial management and regulatory frameworks, but human-centered offers business benefits, and they might be improved operational effectiveness, efficiency, increased likelihood of some sort of objectives to be met. Your products, services are easier to understand. Things are accessible. You can design for diversity. You might reduce the risk of poor adoption of a practice or a service. You might be more responsive and, of course, have enhanced health and safety and not kill people, have fatalities and catastrophes on the other end, disablement also. And it can lead to internal customer and external customer confidence in the way you go about business, right? So human-centered practices are fundamental within that whole framework of good work design. And I often refer to the human-centered organization, an ISO standard. That's the human-centered organizational rationale and general principles. It's an ISO standard 27500 and 2016. So it's 2016. And so certainly if organizations don't have that, please look for that, because the principles around that are that you can capitalize on individual differences. And I love this. You can design for diversity and therefore enact your inclusivity policies. It makes usability and accessibility strategies part of your core business objectives. It does involve a total systems approach and ensures health, safety, well-being, as we said. And it helps you value employees and create a meaningful workplace, and allows for transparency. You're socially responsible, open, and trustworthy. So those sort of aspects around human-centeredness. What do humans need to do? How do they think? What decisions must they make? What are the human factors? So their interpersonal skills, their intrapersonal skills that are required, the decisions they make, and the heuristics, which are kind of those rule of thumb thinking factors that happen. The human-centeredness means that you can appreciate the distributed situation awareness that must occur. And what are the knowledge, skills, abilities, and tactics that people have to have, right? So it's that fundamental aspect that you're writing about and describing in your task analyses and your job analyses. But good work design, you asked me about sort of the contrast. So it's underpinning, they're related. Good work design refers to that process of design, the designing the jobs, tasks, work environments, et cetera, to help promote that well-being of workers while you're meeting a business objective. And it allows you to do more than just focus on symptoms. It's proactive. And I like to use the term inventive, not just preventive. So not just preventative, not just stopping bad things from happening, but it's actually inventive. It's forging pathways for innovation, for doing things in whole new ways, when that means better outcomes can be achieved from that. And it involves ergonomics, it involves human factors, it involves engineering, teamwork, collaboration. Certainly there's risk assessment, but also that aspect of resilience engineering, all part of it. Teamwork, communication, those kinds of aspects. But good work design is a design process. It's a discipline of design. And if you're human-centered, your good work design is likely to be more effective. If you're actually considering the humans that advance a business objective, then your design process is likely to be effective.
So are there different strategies that we can use to assist us with these designs?
Different strategies that we can use.
Yeah, for good work design. Are there strategies that you use in your practice or that you believe are essential for good work design? Yeah, so I mentioned the task and job analysis. Start there. I also do something that's really common in design circles, and that's empathy mapping. And that links to something I mentioned earlier, is about documenting. When I observe, when I interview, I document. What do people say? What do they do? What do they think, and how they've expressed their feelings about their work experience? What are their pain points and their gain points? So I often use an empathy map to look at cohorts of workers and understand the realities of their work. Right? I'll look at company literature. I do a lot of analysis of existing company literature, and I'll look at scientific papers. I'll dig into the literature and try to understand their industry. The cohort, if there's a lot of women working, and if there's women of a certain age, for example, just understand that cohort, understand the experience of what occurs in their industry. And so that's sort of just basic understandings of part of that discovery process. And then when you're mechanizing design, I've got a couple of projects right now, Sharon, where I'm using technology and leveraging technology in really fun ways, whether that's planning with digital whiteboards and collaborating with digital whiteboards and making sure our clients really are part of that process and design journey. That might be something simple. It might be, I've got a couple of clients where we're working on extended reality, and we're using digital twin environments, for example, and we're making sure that we can create scenario-based examples. So trying to take the theory into something fun with storytelling and allowing that sense of place and space and purpose, where you have a high fidelity, authentic environment, and you unpack what could be hazard and risk education, if you will, or just simply trying to understand a new environment of work, and creating this space that you can immerse yourself in so people can unpack and create scenarios. And we create these scenarios. And that shows that we have empathy when we get it right. And we show all the things that might go right and all the things that might go wrong, if you will, in this scenario-based creation. I'm doing this with a few clients right now. And so that, I think, is a great medium. But if you don't have access to that sort of budget, depending on who you're working with, and basic simulation practices that we use in the university environment are things like tag team simulation, where we create a scenario and we have people role-playing this. And as they're role-playing, they can be an actor in that work system. If they get stuck, they can phone a friend and ask for help. Or we tag someone in the room that's part of this observation. Like, you can use this for learning teams too. Pop them into that space and boom, they're on show. So nobody falls asleep because they might get called at any given point, right? And that's a low-tech way of simulating a scenario, right? If you don't have access to all the digital technologies. So is this virtual reality?
Yeah, absolutely. Extended virtual reality. You can use augmented strategies. You can add formative learning and pop-ups, that kind of aspect. But it's an extended. You can interact with it if you wish to create interactive aspects, whether it's equipment, environments. Yeah, that's fun. I'm having fun playing with that with a few clients right now.
It sounds great. This is a form of really testing the environment, isn't it?
It's designing and testing. That's right. Fabricating, designing and testing and learning and it can be used for learning as well. So imagine if you had to do your CPR, right? And you get this annual chest and you retain it long enough to pass with how many compressions you need to do, how many breaths you need to do, and your basic, how you apply a bandage once a year. Is that going to retain? Likely not. But if you get yourself into some immersive environment and you see, sense, and feel, the retention rate is so much higher than a PowerPoint or even a mini demo, where you're in that space and looking around this 360 and you see the crisis happen and you have to watch how it's addressed. And it can be short vignettes, a couple of minutes, but the reality is so memorable, it sticks with you. And then you can have little changes in the scenarios, and imagine just a 5-10 minute toolbox talks where you have different CPR scenarios and first aid scenarios happening once a week. You keep it alive and fresh because the retention of annual training or every 3-year training is low. So the things that are really critical, the things that could kill you, that can create catastrophes, that's the kind of stuff you want to keep really fresh and alive. And that's still part of good work design, even when we're looking at health and well-being. It's not only looking at health and well-being without a safety purpose. There's a co-joined mechanism around that. But it is different than safety management. We can chat about it when you're ready. But sorry, you were asking me a little bit about design practices. We can keep going with depending on what you're designing. Instructional design aids where you engage the users, documents, whether you're doing prototypes. It could be a cardboard box to start with. I've done that with clients when we're looking at the top of access onto a bus type, and we simply put wire and simulate the steps that people have to step over. So it's just anything that makes it a little more real, and to unpack the task and the processes and give and stimulate this conversation. That's part of that design process.
When things are modeled in a very raw format, the user is more likely to give feedback about the design because they don't think that the design is finished. However, if we give them a design that's finished and we put them in it, they're less likely to talk because they assume that the design's already too far down the line. So basically, use a cardboard box and ask people what they think about the design. They're more likely to give you feedback, but pop them into a completely finished console, control room, whatever it is, and ask them what they think about it. They're less likely to give you the feedback.
Yes, great. Fantastic. Yes, so that's right. So the user in design, and then they get to really unpack the scenarios, but if, but what if, but, so I agree with you. And I think too often we're concerned workers are concerned that they don't have purchase agency voice, that things that are just given to them, a truck is just delivered. It's gone through procurement. They've not been consulted. Deal with it, mate, right? And so certainly if you have something too finished as a product, it may seem like that. So in one of the projects that I'm working on in mining, we've had user group consultation all throughout the space to design this environment and the equipment of tire handling, for example. And then we're working with user groups to create scenarios and then to test the scenarios. And we're doing cognitive walkthroughs, talk aloud processes, and situation analysis, where we simply say, we role play. So you're in the environment, you might see somebody operating the tire handler, you may see somebody else walking on the ground, you may see somebody driving a ute, whatever, a team leader, a mining operator, someone who designed the facilities. And we ask them to speak aloud all the things that they think as they're in this environment or watching a video, for example, and we capture that and analyze the themes. And then we tag team, role play, and create other contexts and have other people change roles. So it's a constant role playing and analysis. And when you unpack what people think, you start to unpack, how they feel and how they might react to what their motivations are. That's really important to design.
So we started to talk a little bit about safety management, and maybe we should just go there for a moment.
Okay. So when we're thinking about safety management, I often think even when you're looking at some of the conceptual frameworks that are available in collaborative associations, the framework is really about hang on, hold on, strap in, buckle up, because brace yourselves. It's all downhill from here, right? Get ready. We've got hazards. There are risks. Watch it all erode. Boom. Be prepared, right? Constantly focus on what we don't want. And it's important to understand hazards. Again, I'm not saying that's not important, but the orientation, the philosophy is a little bit different. We're not just assuming that work is going to destroy you in good work design. We think work can construct health, and work is a medium to construct health. So we flip that construct over and we say, well, hang on. Good work design is about designing jobs, process, tasks. And it's not just me as a designer, as an outside work design strategist, human factors, ergonomic specialist. It's about all of us becoming architects of superior design. And the design process is as important as the outcome, because we're inspired, we're engaged, we have a little more hope and interest in that whole concept of happiness, the socialization and the learning that comes from, adult learning comes from problem solving, shared problem solving. So that aspect is like, okay, hang on. We start climbing upward. We innovate, right? We're not just containing bad stuff from happening. And you see employees all the time going, oh, it's another safety talk, yawn, boring. But it's like, here you are in a partially finished cardboard box. Like you gave that example, Sharon. And we want to operate a train, whatever, right? How would you make this, we get to play, right? It's about play. It's creativity generated all over again. And so you have this regenerative design process, this resilience that's built. So you get people excited about life in their workplaces, that medium for it. So it's a completely different orientation. It's how we leverage work to construct health and well-being. And yes, we must obviously mitigate catastrophes, fatalities, and disablement and injuries. But let's continue through that process. How are we going to design for comfort? How are we going to design for fitness and health? How are we going to socialize? How are we going to innovate? How are we going to be productive, financially, productive, efficient? How are we going to celebrate and be buoyant and have some higher aspirations realized at work? So it's that whole continuum, very different orientation. There is an association with resilience engineering. So you hear about this safety too, and the, safety differently, that kind of thing. And they are related, but they are distinct. So good work design is that process of designing jobs, work environments, systems, and it certainly promotes health and well-being. Resilience is more about that monitoring of systems, identifying and addressing the contributing factors that erode a work practice and that can underpin and boost the work practice. So you need some resilience engineering if you're going to understand the systems approach, but that's simply to help inform good work design or to monitor good work design. And then allostasis is, can you be predictive and can you have the system continually designed for improvements almost by itself? So you're creating that framework for good design. So again, they're related, but slightly different.
So what happens then if good work design is not considered?
Good question. So all those aspects of what we talked about when good design is possible get turned upside down. So usability might be really low. Engagement might be incredibly poor among your workforce, or the usability and engagement of your end user, your customer base, right? So that might be, not well adopted. People might be not happy with the end result of whatever you produce. You may find that you have costly rework undertaken. You may find that there's a lack of consideration of all the human characteristics, and you haven't designed for diversity, so you exclude people. And then you're more at risk for those elements like that we thought we were trying to contain, of psychosocial risks, where somebody feels prejudiced against, where we don't invite innovation because we don't have a diverse workforce. So we're already constraining our capabilities. There may be a lack of information, a lack of training, and a lack of competence to do the job, and a lack of interest to continue to thrive, to do more, to learn more. And it can be a toxic workplace, full stop. And I think that speaks a lot. But you can have compromised security or safety, loss of life, loss of data, we're hearing all about data integrity and cybersecurity right now. So that's realistic. Excessive workload, people not understanding those boundaries, a lack of organizational justice, an imbalance in equitable access to career progression, to the use of a different space, financial shortcomings, compromised social responsibilities, environmental responsibilities not met. So it can be quite devastating if you don't do this well. And yet at the same time, when you do it and do it really well, more than just getting by with basic tick the box, requirements, the benefits are triple-fold. It's regenerative. It continues to create new benefits in new ways. So that's really exciting to me when I see companies adopting this type of approach. And it is rare. I'll say there's sometimes one business leader who embraces it really well, or one small business unit, but to have an organizational-wide strategy, really incredibly rare. And I really hope that through communication and advancement like you're doing through HFESA, that breeds more good work design, and that it shows the value proposition of the skill set of a human factors and ergonomics professional to be able to support good work design or champion it as a chief work design strategist.
Thanks for joining us at the Human Factors and Ergonomics Hub, brought to you by the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society of Australia, where human-centred design really matters. If you like this podcast, make us your favourite in your podcast app. We look forward to chatting with you next time.